Welcome to the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host, Craig Patterson, and we're joined here today with a special guest. This is Myriam Belzile-Maguire, co-founder of footwear brand Maguire, based in Montreal. Welcome, Myriam.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me a bit about your brand and how it got started?
We make high-end shoes at a fair price. So basically, we produce shoes in great manufacture in Europe, but we'll sell about 50% less than our competition that produce in the same factory because we're direct to consumer. So I started the brand because I was a shoe designer for a big company. And when I was part of my job was to travel around the world to see the competition, what was happening on the market. And I was seeing a lot of shoes that were $100 and under, and a lot of shoes that were $500 and more. And I felt like there was not much in the price point of $200 to $300 for leather shoes made in like a good factory. So, and this is what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it on the market. And the reason why is that everyone was in a traditional kind of wholesale model where the retailer have to add an extra 50% on their of profit on your product, which made these price point kind of really hard to achieve to offer good quality. And going to the factory, I would see high-end shoes produced in the same manufacturer than lower-end shoes. So I realized there was a lot of things that customers didn't know about the quality of the shoe, and there was place to do something a bit more fair for the customers.
So Maguire is, like you said, direct to consumer. It does not wholesale in other retailers.
So now recently, there's marketplaces. So retailers now offers like wholesale in a marketplace. So they just connect their website to your website, and they take a much smaller percentage when they work in that way. So right now we work in that way with Simons in Canada and Nordstrom in the US. And we were approached last week by Macy's. So we're setting up Macy's. So this way it allowed us to do wholesale, but keep our good price for the customers.
Now, tell me about Maguire's first stores that it opened, and we'll talk about a new one in New York City as well, because there's been a bit of an expansion.
Yeah, so we first opened a tiny store in 2018 in Montreal inside a glasses shop that was called Voskin. So it was kind of a shop in shop. So it allowed me to get customers like every, I would say 30 minutes that were coming for eye exam, and then they would discover a product. And then slowly the space became, I think it was like 500 square foot. It was really small, maybe a bit smaller. Maybe it was like 100 square foot. It was tiny, tiny. And then quickly there was too many customers. So I saw a space on Saint Laurent in Montreal that was much bigger. And we decided to open our first concept store there in 2019. So a year after we opened a small shop. And then we opened in Toronto in March 2020. So we never opened because of COVID. So it was open and closed for a long time. And then we did New York in 2022. We moved Toronto last year in 2023. We moved from Dundas Street to Queen Street. And then this year we're opening Brooklyn. So we've been opening like, I would say a store every 2 years, more or less.
What brought the leap from Canada to the United States, and specifically the New York area? Because this will be two stores, I think, in the greater New York area.
Yeah, so for us, like to kind of be noticed in the fashion world by magazine or journalists or like you bigger retailers to be noticed, we decided to go to New York because it's where there's a fashion week. There's a lot of editors that travel there every year to see what's new in New York. So for us, it was important to be in a neighborhood where people go for dinner, brunch, like where a lot of people like um, travel by or hang out, like even tourists, like an area where tourists would go. So that's why we picked Nolita. And then the fact to be in New York, it allowed us to be noticed by Nordstrom. So Nordstrom reached out to us, Macy's reached out to us. So I think it's opportunity that we would have never had if we would have just stayed in Montreal. So for us, it was a way to be seen by the fashion industry. And I think so far it's working, and that's why we decided that New York is big enough to have a second store, because a lot of people that live in Brooklyn don't often travel to Manhattan. Like a lot of people work from home. So that's why we decided to open in Williamsburg a second location.
Being in New York City gave you that brand presence, which, well, I guess allowed the company to expand further with partners.
And it's funny, a lot of customers from Toronto or Montreal discover us in New York when they're shopping, because you often go to New York like to shop. So you will make a say I've been before on shopping trip in New York, and your main goal is to shop, So a lot of customers will discover us, Canadian customer will discover us in New York, and then the New York store will tell them like buy in Canada because it's much cheaper. So one thing that we wanted to do, because we're Canadian, is to keep our price better in Canada than in the US. The same way that, let's say, brand like Chanel will be cheaper if you buy them in Paris than if you buy them in London or in New York. So I used to shop high-end brands in my old job for just to look at the competition and everything. And it's one thing I noticed. I would know which brand to buy in which country. So we wanted to replicate that for the Canadian customers.
Can you tell me a bit about e-commerce? Because there's going to be obviously, online sales as well in Canada and beyond.
Yeah, so one thing we saw is that every time we open a store in a location, the online sale of this region go up. So quickly we saw like a relation in between like physical retail and online retail. So right now our sales are 50-50. So 50% is coming from the store and 50% is coming from online. And we want to keep like growing the online sale if it's possible. But a lot of people will have a first touch point with the brand in person, and then will maybe buy another 3 or 4 times online once they know the quality of the product, their size, once they know that we're like a real company that offer good customer service, then they will be ready to commit online.
That is so interesting because that's a pretty high percentage of sales being online.
Yeah. And we're working hard to keep it this way. So we have a team that works fully on like the online sales, and every time we do something for the online, it brings also customers in store. So we have to be careful what we push online, because sometimes, let's say, the stock would be available at the warehouse. If we push it online, it could bring customers in store. So we need to make sure that the stock is in the store before we do anything online. So they're really connected.
What are you thinking in terms of a bit of a longer term store expansion for Maguire?
So we're always like seizing the opportunity. So there's two ways to look at it. So it's either we look at where we have the most sell in the US or in Canada, and we open a store there. But then, for example, in the US, our number 3 city is Los Angeles. So I went there and I've been looking at like the neighborhood and see like the price of the rent just to have an idea. But the thing is, it's out west, and then we realized the shipping would be double the price than if we ship more in the east. So then we're like, should we stay in the east where we have 4 seasons, like in Montreal, Toronto, and New York? So right now we design for a 4 season market. So if we go in a warmer place, we'll have to change our assortment. So we're trying to figure out, are we ready to change our assortment and maybe structure um, all the operation differently, so we're able to ship for cheaper in the west? Or should we keep it more in the east and open in a place like Boston or Chicago, where we also have sales? So we're kind of torn, and every time we're opening a store, it's also because we see a great real estate opportunity. So I kind of check around until I find something at a really good price in a good neighborhood. So it's often how we do it. It's when we see a great opportunity, we jump on it.
What kind of neighborhoods do you look for? Because obviously, Queen Street's quite trendy. I think Laurier as well. And then they're street front, they're not shopping malls.
Yeah, so I like to pick neighborhoods that have like a strong, like I would say, nightlife or restaurant life. So that there's always like people outside at all time during the day. So even in Nolita, we have a restaurant that is open until 1 in the morning next door. So there's always people out, there's always people looking, like seeing the brand even if, when the store is closed. So for us, it's important to be in a neighborhood where people will go out on the weekend just to spend some time and enjoy. And I feel in the big cities, it's in these trendy neighborhood and less in shopping mall. Like I feel I used to go, I'm from a small town, so I used to go in shopping mall in the weekend and at night because that was the only thing I could do in my city. But I feel in bigger cities, people have many options. So being next to a good ice cream place or a good brunch place, it's really good for us because everyone from that city will get to this brunch place or ice cream place eventually. So I feel like it's a good way to be discovered.
Let's talk a bit about the product now. Are there any particular styles you've designed that are particularly popular with consumers, or tell me a bit about Maguire and what makes it tick for product?
So I feel at the beginning it was our winter boots. So we're offering winter boots that don't look like winter boots. They just look like clean leather boots, but with real shirting inside. So in Canada, that was a big hit at the beginning. Now that the weather have changed, you probably know a lot of like winter coat companies are struggling because people are not ready to invest in these like expensive product for like 1 month of snow. But we used to have like 6 months of snow almost. So that then we changed a lot our design to be more in tune with the weather and the seasons that are changing. So right now there's a big comeback to ballerina. So we had a signature ballerina that have been selling really well on all three markets. And overall, when we have a bestseller in one market, it's going to be a bestseller in every market, except for the winter boots. Because the first year we moved to New York, I sent like a lot of winter boots, and I was like, we're gonna be the only one that have this kind of product. It's gonna be fantastic. But then we realized no one had winter boots because no one wants to buy them in New York. So people would come in and ask for the style without the shirting. So we had to adapt our product once we open in the US to make sure we have different type of winter boots, not only the shirting one.
How about now the company's expanded into other product categories? Tell me a bit about that as well.
Yeah, so every time I meet like a factory owner that I like that offer a product that could be complementary, I always look into it. So I think we want to stay in accessories because that's what we do. And recently I got in touch with a friend I used to work with at Aldo that started his own jewelry factory in China. So it's a French Canadian guy that owns a factory in China, which is really rare. So I could have like full transparency on like the process, and I know exactly like who's working on the product and I see the conditions. So we decided to launch a jewelry line for that reason because of this special connection. So for me and for the glove, for example, I was shopping in Florence in a glove shop, and then I saw a box on the floor with the name of the supplier and the phone number and everything. So I took a picture. I speak pretty good Italian, so I called the factory in the south of Italy, and then I spoke to them in Italian. They don't speak a word of English, and I was able to say like, "Oh, can you do glove for us?" And we do glove with them every year, so it's been 4 or 5 years. So it's often like I like to start with like a great factory, and then see what we can do together in terms of products. So I get inspired for my design from like the skills of the factory and the type of product they're able to make.
Are there any other categories that you think that the Maguire brand might get into?
I mean, a lot of people are asking us about men's. So, in I think our second or third year, we did men's shoes with a great factory in Florence. Um, and then we still have the contact, we still work with them, but we started making women's shoes with them, which they realized quickly that you produce a lot more women's shoes than men's shoes because we realized that we were selling one pair of men's shoes for 100 pair of women's shoes at the time because we were smaller, so we didn't have like all the exposure that we have right now. But a lot of people are asking about men's shoes because there's also not that many options in terms of like let's say something made in Italy at a great price. So we might look into it once we're more established and we have more customers.
I'd probably become a customer myself.
The problem with men is they buy always the same shoes. Like they love to rebuy the same shoes over and over, but every 5 years, when women often have more activity, like they need a shoe for a wedding, they need a shoe for like a special event, they need a shoe for work, for the weekend. So that's why we're into women's shoes.
That is terrific. Is there anything else that we want to mention about Maguire Shoes today?
No, we're just excited to keep growing, and we don't have a clear plan where we're gonna open next, but we're always looking for new opportunities.
That's wonderful. Well, we'll keep following the brand as it continues to progress. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been Myriam Belzile-Maguire of Maguire Shoes. Thank you for joining us, Myriam.
Thank you.
And I'm Craig Patterson. I'm the founder of Retail Insider and the host of the Retail Insider video interview series. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for listening or watching, however you're consuming this. Take care and bye for now.